You mentioned that you were met Keltner back in Oklahoma, and you guys were both in. He was with Delaney and Bonnie, kind of bar bands.
Yeah.
How'd you get from being a drummer in an Oklahoman bar band to now being producer of Grammy Award-winning albums? And big jump, but
yeah. Well, it was a continuous trip. The first thing that happened to me, I was in the same band from the time I was 14, or just right about at my 15th birthday, up until all the time during when I met Keltner, which that was in 1964. I started with a group that eventually became the Third Avenue Blues Band, which was a real good band. Started out of clubs in Oklahoma City, and when I started touring, as soon as I got out of high school in 1967. I stayed with that band up until 11 years ago, so I guess it would be 71. I mean, I stuck it out. So that was like 7 years.
Wow.
With the same group of guys. And we had one album out on Universal, or Uni Records, which is MCA.
Right. Remember them.
Which I don't have. Yeah, I don't have the record. I don't even care to. But the band was real good. It was a real tight band. So when I met Jim, he heard that band and he really liked it a lot. But it was the kind of band that wasn't commercial. It was really, I played blues shuffles. It was kind of a cross between Jack McDuff and B.B. King.
Right.
It was unusual band with organ bass and two horns and black singer, and it wasn't necessarily geared toward the popular music of the time, though we thought we were. And when I had finally just reached the end of my rope with that, I left that in 71 and moved to Nashville and joined a band called Barefoot Jerry. And it was it was there that just, my life really just plummeted totally downhill. I've been into drugs very heavily. And my wife was sick and everything seemed wrong, and I was so miserable. And that brought about what the change was in my life, which was actually accepting Jesus in my life. I went outside and prayed one day, and I said, Lord, if you can give me some peace, I'd do anything. And I heard something back, spoke to me so loud, it literally scared me. It said, I want you to leave here and go back to Oklahoma, and I have a plan for you. The first thing I did was I ran back inside with this band and smoked a joint and tried to forget it.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't want any part of it. The next day, the band decided to go a different direction. The guitar player was leaving that I liked, and they didn't know if they were going to stay together. And I said, I think I'll go back to Oklahoma. It seemed easy to do.
Yeah.
And I did. And I didn't know what was going to happen there. I went back and I ran into the guitar player that had been with me in the blues band. He was working in a mission on the streets with wino, playing guitar in it. I went to that and I started working in this little church in a mission. I just said, I'd quit playing music. And I'm just going to try to get my life in order. And we got our organ player that had been in the band and led him to Jesus. About 2 weeks later, Harlan, who had been in mental hospitals, and he had a miraculous, just mental recovery. And then got the trumpet player, Fletch, who had been heavy into drugs, and we prayed for him, and he had no withdrawal, so we said, this stuff is very real. So I started doing that, and I remember during the time I was really tempted to join Bill Chase's band. He offered me a good job, and it was a lot of money, but I just decided to stay and work in the mission. And from there I met Andrae, and he was the only guy at that time who was out actually making a living doing Christian music. And we were the first musicians who were Christians that he had met that were professional. I mean, really professional musicians who could play. It shocked him, and so he started trying to hire us immediately. Finally, in June of 72, I went to work with Andrae, and from there, a year after that, he had another guy producing his albums, and he was starting to sell and do well. And he said, I don't want to have this guy produce my albums. I want to produce my own albums because I don't like the way they sound. Then he asked me if I would hire musicians for him, because I had, from my previous time, known guys like Dean Parks and Joe Sample and different people, if I would hire a band for him for a session to get better players. So I started by doing that. And then we hired a band. He liked the tracks that we were doing. And it came time for him to sing his songs. He would say, you coming down to the studio? And I was sitting there, and I'd tell him if it sounded good to me or not, if it was in tune or what was happening. When I got ready to mix, he said, we're mixing the album, you got to come in to mix. And I said, wait a minute, you're producing this. And he said, no, you've been producing this more than me. We're co-producing this.
Right.
I'll split the deal with you. You're co-producer. And I didn't know essentially what a producer was. But I guess it's what we were doing.
Which I was doing it.
And so we finished that album. It was called Take Me Back. It was the first album I worked on as producer, and it won a Grammy for him.
Wow.
And so, which was his first one. So immediately people thought I was a producer.
Right.
And that's where that started.
That's great, huh?